And that sort of, again, gave me that formula to go for it. Just go for it. Doesn't matter. What am I going to lose? The worst thing is that they're going to say no. And when they say no, that's where the negotiation process starts. He was always in TV. I knew he was a very strong leader in my city. And I was really, really nervous. What can I do? How can you support me for me to be here? And I think he spoke about scholarships when he did his speech. And he looked at me like sort of intrigued and put his hand on my shoulder and say, "What's your name?" And say, "Laura," in Spanish, my name. And then he say, "Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you book an appointment with my..."
You're obviously a very good pitcher at 15 years of age.
I think more than anything, I was genuine. And that's what is also very... And you gotta be there. And things, some things are luck, some things are hard work. But you find those environments where the hard work and the luck just come, and it's just like you are there in the right place, the right moment. And as startup founders, you just gotta believe, you gotta be determined, you gotta propose, you gotta get out there and work hard, and luck will find you.
Welcome, Laura Hicks. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Excited to be here.
It's a great pleasure. And, I found you through LinkedIn, and I was looking at your profile and I saw that you're an entrepreneur, you've had various startups. And then I found this amazing video where you were thanking one of your professors or the director of the University in Colombia for the opportunity that he gave you, which is a really beautiful story. I'd love to hear about that, what happened on Open Day and from there. But let's start going back to your childhood in Colombia, because you are a really determined person. I think more than just about anyone I've met, and even since a young child, you've had that determination. So I'd like to know about that childhood and what spurred that determination at that time. And then let's go into later on when you go to that Open Day.
That's lovely. Yeah, thank you. Yes, definitely. I guess the best way to understand everything is just really go back to, the childhood and how things made me so determined. And so my mom was a single mom. We didn't really have much of the support of my father. And that was usually as well the case in South America. Anyway, and my mom had this convenience store as growing up, and that was really the source of our income. At the time, many multinationals like Coles and Woolies in Australia were starting to emerge, and as they were growing and became like the centers of people going and buying the grocery there, my mom's convenience store started doing like very poorly, like the income. And I remember us being young and seeing my mom really struggling with the business. She used to be very sad about it, very stressed, and that kept going to my teenage years. My dad was about supporting us sometimes, but it was not really his priority. That was just what he was.
Did you have other siblings? Did you have other siblings?
Yes, I have an older brother, and so both of us were sort of in similar situation. But my older brother is 13 years older than me,
right?
And he didn't study. He was not interested in that thing either. And my mom didn't do much about it because, in some sense, she was as well also very focused on these things of her life that she needed to take care of. And I didn't see her seeing much of us like crafting a future for her children. She was more like surviving day to day. of what needed to be done and things like that. So he didn't study. She didn't study either. My mom grew up in a farmer's family in the mountains of Colombia in Medellin, and
Yeah, and
then they migrated to the city.
I imagine as well, similar to my wife grew up in Argentina, sort of involved with the Argentinian community somewhat, and many of them say, especially before, unless you study, you really can't get a good job. You can't get on in life. Like different to Australia, for example, where you can study at any time.
That's right.
So was it like that at that time as well? You had to have money, or you had to be scholarship, or something like that to be able to
Yeah.
get ahead. Or like it was much harder for poorer people, I imagine.
Yeah, it's very, very competitive, and education is the only thing that can take you really further or to a different place. So that
Mhm.
people that didn't have that education, especially in the mid-century as well, all of these people did not have any opportunities to get any further because there was not that education, and everything was very basics in their thoughts, their beliefs, and but yeah, it's absolutely competitive, and if you don't study, you won't have a future.
Mm.
In Australia, people can have, life experience and end up
Yeah.
finding their careers, even end up having very high corporate jobs and not having a degree or no formal education at all. But in
Well,
South America,
what
you
about the
must have an
opportunities for
education.
entrepreneurs in Colombia? Are there many opportunities for entrepreneurs? Do they um, you know, have the government help in that area, or private organisations, or they incubators, or is there any opportunities for entrepreneurs in Colombia?
No,
Mm-hmm.
no, everything. I mean, I haven't been there in almost like 20 years, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's still all those opportunities are very limited, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
hard to have a startup. When I look back at my mom convenience store, that was like so sort of a startup, but obviously the lack of education doesn't make like when I think back very often now with my mindset and the way I work,
Yeah.
it's like all these opportunities that she didn't innovate. Like how you gonna compete with a bigger
Mm-hmm.
store, right?
Mm-hmm.
How she could have competed with these giants emerging in the cities that were stopping people buying from her the everyday items, which was like the cheese, the milk,
Yeah.
some fruit and veggies, and how she could have taken this thing to the next level, or
It'd
how,
be
yeah.
interesting to actually analyze that like a bit later, sort of
Mm.
like a new startup in a way, and you can go back and think, okay, these are the things that she could have implemented, and that's let's go back there a bit later. I find that fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I always think about that because that was the time all these concepts of big stores were emerging, and that was like all the stuff that was happening as well in the US. This is the 80s,
Hmm.
90s, and how she could have ended up being, the one that was the biggest store because she
Hmm.
scaled. And what was the competitive advantage? Is it price? Is it range?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
what was it, right? But instead of that, she didn't have any of that information to keep growing it
yeah,
store. And instead of that, she kept struggling and struggling, and she just closed
yeah,
it down because she
yeah,
couldn't compete anymore.
yeah.
She didn't
I
have
mean,
customers.
we can come back to that, but how did that affect you when you saw, the store going downhill? I guess your mother was more stressed, less
Yeah.
income. How did that affect you as a child? And did your mum push you to be educated?
Yeah, it was very hard because everything was very, very limited. Everything that we have, holidays, there was not like such a concept. Like I was taken by my aunties on holidays, and they would pay for my expenses because my mom didn't have things
Hmm.
like that, or I didn't have. I remember my mom would buy a pair of shoes, and she would pay month by month for like a year,
Mm.
and things like that, where everything was super limited. And I remember it was really stressful for us. And as those things were scaling and I was getting older, I was like, I'm not gonna have a chance to go to uni. And that was like 12, 13, 14. And I was like, if I don't go to uni, this is going to be the rest of my life. And I always remember those thoughts because for me, it was very clear. I was like, this is not going to happen. And back to your question of my mom promoting education, not really. She didn't put that as a focus on my life, but the environment where I was at school and other environments where I put myself, that was very clear. Like, for example, I have later in my teens boyfriends that were studying at uni, and they become examples for me to follow and observe that how things were going for them, or other friends or family members, like cousins and things like that study. And I was like, this is the only way out this situation, that it was so stressful and so sad for us. And so when I was like 13 or something like that, I really focused on my studies and doing my best. And we have as well the final year test, which is sort of the equivalent of the Hicks exams in Australia, where I really put my mind into it for like a few years. I say, like, I'm going to perform really well on those exams, and I'm sure if I do well, I'm going to get in a public university.
Would that be through a scholarship? Was that the only way, through a scholarship?
There were some public universities, but education is not really great, and it's also very competitive. But that is possible, but at the time I just didn't know how that was going to be, and I was always very anxious of, like, am I going to study or not? And so in year we don't have year 12, but in year 11, which is the last year, I was doing top of my class. I was the president of the school. I was like this very organized young girl, very young, because I was like only 15, and that was sort of unusual as well to be that young in year 11. And then the state exams happened, and I got the second spot in my state.
Wow.
And it was so exciting, and it was fabulous, because I knew I was going to be able to potentially go to a public university. But things play out differently when I went to this leadership event. So I was invited to a leadership event in my city, and this was like the presidents of many schools in Medellin, and it was hosted by this private university, which is like, I don't know, the equivalent of Harvard in Colombia. Like, you just pay all this money for a semester, like unachievable, something like so expensive for me and many young people in Colombia. So only the rich people will go to these universities. So I went to that leadership. I was invited because of the scores, and I was the president of the schools, and it was like this amazing discussion and things. And there was the vice chancellor there. He presented a keynote speech that day for like young leaders and things like that. And at the end of the event, I went running to him. I was like,
so just before that, you're sitting there. What was going through your head? And were you nervous? I mean, were you like a gregarious person, shy person? And what was going through your head to actually go and approach him like that?
Really, I was very nervous. He was a very respected person. He was always in TV. I knew he was a very strong leader in my city. And I was really, really nervous. But I have always been very outgoing. Part of being as well in that leadership role. So I was never like, even if I was like embarrassed or no, so short or shy or whatever, I would always put myself forward. And I was like, I don't have anything to lose. I just go and ask him. I was like, what can I do? Like I said, and I ran. He was getting out of the auditorium, and I ran to him.
So what exactly did you say to him?
Yeah. I said to him, his name is Juan Luis. I said, Dr. Juan Luis, if you don't mind, I would like just to express that there's nothing any bigger dream for me that I study in this university. The university name is EAFI. And I had this amazing score in my exams and in the rest of my marks at school, and I'm the leader of my school. And what can I do? How can you support me for me to be here? And I think he spoke about scholarships when he did his speech, and he looked at me like sort of intrigued and put his hand on my shoulder and say, "What's your name?" And say, Laura, in Spanish, my name.
Yeah.
And then he say, "Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you book an appointment with my secretary and we talk about it, and you bring your marks and you tell me a story." But
when you went home and you knew you were having that appointment, what was going through your mind? How were you feeling?
oh, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was just could not believe it. And when I went to tell my mom and my aunties, they actually didn't believe me. They were
Oh,
like,
really?
"No, yeah, no one believed me." And he was a very well-known person. So they were like, "Are you sure? Like, what are you going to discuss with him?" And I was like, I asked him if I could have a scholarship, and I wanted to show him my marks and what I have done and everything. And he gave me like the card to book an appointment with the secretary, and so I did.
What was the
And
gap between that and you going to the appointment? How long was that?
it was like a couple of weeks at the
Okay.
time,
And were
and
you
I was
thinking about
very,
that? Were
very excited.
you were excited about it? You weren't anxious, just excited?
Oh, I was extremely excited. I couldn't
Uh-huh.
wait, and
Uh-huh.
I prepared everything for that
Of course.
meeting.
Yeah.
So I went to school and I asked the school secretary to help me to put all my marks together, like all my proof records of
Yeah.
performance, all of that stuff. So I put those documents meticulously done, and I went to see him, and I was meticulously dressed as well with my uniform
Mhm.
and all my little budgets from his school.
Yeah.
And he had this amazing as well office, and I was just, when you're just like this young person as well with
Mhm. Mhm.
limited resources, going to something
Mm.
that looks so wealthy and so important. Like, I remember
Mm.
all those feelings of everything being so big and all coming down to that crucial moment for someone that young. And I knew everything was sort of on the line, but I had a good story on my side. So I sat down with him and I explained him everything. And I was like, I am so stressed because I can't pay uni and I'm doing so well, and this university inspires me. I mean, the campus was beautiful. Everything was stunning. Even at this time, that university has nothing to envy to other
Mhm.
international universities.
Yeah.
So it seemed like this place for me to be, and where I could, take things to the next level. And then he was very receptive and immediately very supportive, and say, "This looks fabulous. It's so great. I can give you a scholarship from." They have like these layers of
Yeah.
scholarships, and he had this decision making where he had an allocation that he could choose a person to give them
Wow.
a scholarship.
Yeah.
And so he granted me the scholarship, and I
Yeah.
just could not believe it. It was like the biggest miracle of my life.
Yeah. What was
And
going through your
when
head
I,
when he said that? I'm going to give you a scholarship. And were you actually expecting that, or were you thinking maybe, maybe not?
no, I wasn't sure. I never thought, because this sort of news only happened to other people, things for me were always so limited, so hard, and yeah, everything seemed so hard and unachievable that I actually didn't think that would be the case. But even though I didn't think it would happen, I was there with everything and
Yeah.
putting myself forward. And he couldn't be as well another person and say, "Oh, sorry, we can't do that," and
Mm,
walk away in that moment.
absolutely.
So I think he's beautiful as well for who he was and
Mm,
how he saw all of this playing up and giving it to someone that really turned um, their life around just
yeah.
because of this
Yeah.
opportunity.
So you're
Yeah.
sitting in his office, this big, beautiful office, and you're feeling like, wow, this is amazing. This person, I'm actually here. This is going to happen. And then he says, I'm going to give you a scholarship. What happens in your mind then? Take us through slow motion. What's going on?
I could not believe it. It was not a bigger honor for me. How I was going to tell everyone that I was going to study in the Harvard of Colombia, and people would be asking, "How you paying that? Like, how could you?" Because this university where only the children of politicians or the children of
Mhm.
very wealthy people will go
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And those were my friends when I went to uni, and
Mhm.
I was just this kid that only had one pair of shoes for the whole
Mm.
year or one pair of jeans,
Mm.
and everything was yeah,
How did
very
that
hard
feel, like
worked.
being at uni with these other rich kids and you're the girl with one pair of shoes and jeans? Like, how did that feel to you?
Um, to be honest, I was very scared about that because usually when when you are a teenager, you you don't know how to manage these things, and I
Mm.
thought I was going to be rejected by these kids, or I was going to be uh yeah, bullied by them or something like
Mm.
that. So I was very scared, and I was like always trying to pretend I wasn't different, but it was very obvious, of
Mhm.
course. And all my friends have cars to go to uni, so they will drive their expensive cars, or they have like all these things that I didn't have, like expensive computers and but they didn't. All my friends were amazing, and I remember my friends as well used to pick me up at my house and take and drive me to uni because in some points I used to walk to uni and that walk was like a 50-minute walk, so I
Right.
could save the money from the bus to go out on Friday nights with my friends.
Oh, wow.
So many of them were like, "What are you doing? What are you walking 40, 50 minutes? I'll pick you up." And they will start to pick me up and take
Mhm.
turns. And um, all my friends were incredibly generous, and they will have holiday houses and they would invite me to have holidays with
Yeah.
them, and they would share
Mhm.
their things with me, which was beautiful and wonderful. And I never felt rejected. And
That's
but at the
wonderful.
beginning, I was scared about it. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, because it could, some universities or some organizations could be totally different. And I guess they could have learned from you as well, your humility as well, So I'm sure you would have helped them in some ways as well.
Yeah, I feel like I was a genuine friend, and we have very genuine friendships.
Mhm.
My friends from uni are still my best friends, and I also met their parents,
Mhm.
and they were very generous people that also inspired me
Yeah.
to go to other levels, and I'm so grateful for all of that.
Yeah. And so you went through university and you finished, you graduated, right? And so what was happening with what was his name? The vice chancellor?
Juan Luis.
Juan, was Juan Luis supporting you all the way through? I mean, tell us about that. And when you graduated, tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so he was a mentor as well, which was wonderful as well to think back these in my life when you are a young person and you have someone not just giving you an opportunity, but nurturing your career and seeing that potential in you. So semester by semester, I always had a coffee catch up with him where
Mm-hmm.
I will tell him how I was going, and I was granted with the scholarship. I have access to so many things. Like I have unlimited sign up to language studies and other courses. It was almost like they were trying to level me with the rest of the student
Mm-hmm.
population.
Okay.
And so I had access to all these things as I needed them to study French and the basics of English at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like a little course as well at uni about agro businesses. And we spoke about wine businesses. And somehow I got fascinated by wine and the wine industry
Mm-hmm.
and how this product was a culture. And he was a wine lover too, so I started to
Mm-hmm.
talk to him about this interest. And
Mm-hmm.
as I was going on my business degree, I thought it would be wonderful to have my internship in a wine business, but
Yeah.
Colombia doesn't have wine because wine only uh, grows or at its best in the extreme polarities of the world, like you
Yeah.
have in the northern or southern hemisphere wine growth. So I started looking for the scholarships, and he was always supporting me in this process. And I got very as well determined about this, and I sort of started, understanding this formula that was working for me and
Mm-hmm.
worked out as well for
Yeah.
other things in my life, that I needed to be determined and I needed to ask for things when I needed them and when I wanted them,
Yeah.
and start that negotiation process with
Yeah.
whoever it was
It's a good lesson
to
for startups as
obtain.
well. But in startups, you need to have that. You need to be able to talk to people. You need to be able to ask for things, and you need to be determined as well.
Yes. So I really, um, I was very engaged into this topic, and I was like, I want to have a scholarship, sorry, an internship
Yeah.
in a wine, um, in a wine business. And so I studied studying French, and France was the center of the world with
Yeah.
wine. And I was like, I want a scholarship, sorry, an internship in wine. So I started looking at all these wine businesses in
Yeah.
on the internet, and I had a book where I put every entry to each of these businesses that I reach out to,
Mm-hmm.
and say, I presented myself, I'm this student, la la la, I want to do an internship
Yeah.
on this area. And I end up sending more than 300 emails to
Wow.
wineries in
And how many
France
people got back
and
to you?
in
Like
Spain.
a whole bunch of people got back to you?
No, only
No,
one.
one. Just one out of 300. Oh, that's
Only
determination again,
one.
isn't it? But then again, everyone's thinking, oh, that's great, she got one. But tell us the rest of the story.
That's the only one you need. But that's what you have to be persistent. So
Yeah.
I sent like all these emails, and only one came back to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they said to me, and I was also running out of time, and I was very
Mm.
stressed because I was like, I'm not going to find an opportunity.
Mm.
And again, because my friends would have like all these resources, they were all going to the US for
Mm.
internships, to Europe,
Yeah.
to all these exotic places. And I started getting fascinated by that idea of going overseas and
Mm.
having that opportunity. So they came back to me, it was a French winery, and they say, hey, Laura, thanks for reaching out. We do have an internship opportunity, but it's not in France. We have wineries in Chile and in Argentina, Spain, and Portugal. And the vacant at the moment is in Argentina. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, I'll go
Yeah.
anywhere.
I'll take it.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just
And
bought your ticket and went there.
so I say yes, yes, yes. I
Yeah.
figure it out, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
spoke. And I remember speaking to him over the phone, and it was like this French person, and it was so exotic. Like overseas, it was like, it seemed like
Yeah.
unachievable, all these things happening. And I was so nervous on the phone, and I would say, yes, yes, yes. And then I hang up, and I was like, hang on, how I'm going to get there?
As in
I don't
affordability.
even have, I don't even have money to go to to go out with my friends on Friday night, like on a Friday night.
Yeah.
How I'm gonna go to overseas to
Yeah.
this internship. And so I email Juan Luis, Dr. Juan Luis. I say, hey, can I talk to you? I found this internship in Argentina, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. How I'm gonna get there? He was like, he was so excited. It was so beautiful. Like it was almost like for him. Like he was this person that was like so famous, so powerful, and
Yeah.
just being so excited for me getting this
Wow.
internship.
Yeah.
And he was, doesn't matter, we'll make it happen.
Wow.
The university will pay everything. So just go. And it was beautiful.
How
So
wonderful.
he found someone
Yeah.
in the uni to organize the tickets, and they
Hmm.
also helped me with monthly expenses. And then my family also put all their efforts together, and everyone will give me like all this money, pocket money, to buy bits, like all the aunties, all the
Wow.
grand aunties,
Yeah.
everyone, the neighbors, everyone will put a little bit
That's
of
wonderful.
money
Yeah.
for me to go. And
Because it's a big thing,
and
I
I
guess, for you to do that. Like, I guess no one in your family had done anything like that before, no?
absolutely, yes. But then was every time I came with this big news at home, they wouldn't believe me. Even if I had a good track of record of like achievements,
No,
they
you're
would
not
be
going.
like,
No, no, you're
no.
not. You're not. No, you're not going. It's not possible. It's not
They were
possible.
like, yeah, they were like, you're confused. Maybe you didn't understand well what was happening. And I was like, no, I do. Like, it's happening.
Yeah, you were that
Um,
one massively determined person in your family, and I know. Look, growing up in poverty would have given you some of that determination. But was there anything else? Because that determination that you have is very unusual, and to be able to actually approach people and what you did. Is there anything else that's happened in your life that you think has made you like that?
um, no, I think it was the struggles of poverty.
Hmm.
Yes, it was traumatizing, and it was sad. It felt unfair. It felt that you were never gonna make it, and you were always wondering like why they have it and I don't, and everything felt like you were not just gonna able to make it, and that was gonna be your reality.
But
So
but
when I
even
look
with
back
that,
at those times,
but even with that, with all of those negative feelings,
mm,
you persisted and you had that determination.
yes, I felt like I had to do everything to change that reality. And by doing these things and approaching to people and proactively, uh, I guess, doing something about it, I started seeing the results.
Hmm.
And that sort of, again, gave me that formula to go for it. Just go
Yeah.
for it. Doesn't matter. What am I going to lose? The worst thing is
Mm.
that they're going to say no.
Mm.
And when they say no, that's where the negotiation process starts.
Mm.
Why not? Right?
That's
No is
such a
only
great
the starting point.
that's such a great mentality for a startup founder, don't you think? Like, because you're going to get so
Absolutely.
many rejections, so many no's, and try and think, okay, so why is that? And try and work out the reason why, maybe adjust what's happening. I think that's a great lesson, and that openness, and to actually go and approach people. Like for example, in sales, even myself, it's like, oh, you got to talk to people. Yeah, you do. You got to talk to people, and you'll
Yeah.
get better at it, and just get out there and do it. So, I think you're a fantastic example of that. Um,
Yeah. I think most thing in life, and especially for like startups and businesses, you always have to have a proposition. You always proposing to someone something that you want to do. And if you don't do it, then 100% of the answer is going to be no, even if you didn't ask for
Mm.
it.
Mm.
But when you ask for something or put that proposal forward for someone to consider that offer or that request, it comes down to 50-50, yes or no. And if it's yes, like wonderful, but most of the time is no. And then if it's no, why not? And then you start working on the constraints of the no.
Yeah, you
What is
get
that?
the feedback, and that's really, really valuable as well. I remember in my startup in the first years, I was really nervous
Mm-hmm.
about talking to, top executives in companies that we're approaching. Made me really nervous. So I sort of went to a lower tier, but I would have actually been better off going straight. And when I did go straight to that tier, sometimes it was actually a better experience anyway. Some of the middle or
Yeah.
managers that are on the second tier weren't as approachable as the top CEOs. Sometimes they're very approachable. So
Yes, and we are wired as well to uh, visualize people as not being accessible. Like, oh,
mm,
I can't talk to them because they are this person in this position. But that should not be the case. You should always find avenues to genuinely try to talk to someone about something that you want to put forward or achieve, and that's completely fine. To put yourself forward, even to that senior people within an organization or in another structure
yeah,
like a social structure.
and
You should be able to talk to anyone.
yeah, and thinking back when you went and you presented to Juan Luis, is that the right name? Yeah, Juan Luis.
Yes.
That so you said you prepared for a couple of weeks, right? So that's like preparing a pitch in a way, isn't it? So also preparing is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because it is absolutely a pitch, because you always with a pitch is the time is very limited, and that's where the elevator pitch comes in. It
Yeah,
has to be short, and you gotta be able to tell this story and what the problem is and what's the solution that you want in a very short amount of time. And
yeah,
you gotta as well transfer those emotions and those needs
yeah.
to this person. So yeah, that is it. Yeah, how do you pitch that idea and that need to someone, and how you make impact? How do you make them feel to be part of what's
Yeah.
happening?
You're obviously a very good pitcher at 15 years of age.
I think more than anything, I was genuine, and that's
There,
what is also very important
absolutely.
when you have a business.
Mm,
You gotta be genuine. You gotta be transparent. You gotta be
mm,
yourself. You gotta be you gotta see people as people. You know,
yeah,
they are a normal person just like me, and I just wanna talk to them about this request or this idea that I
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. And so you were at the winery in Argentina, and how long did you spend there?
Yeah, so I went to Argentina, which was amazing. I did the internship for like 3 months, and they
Hmm.
were like, "Do you want to stay? We'll start paying
Hmm.
you," because it was an
Nice.
unpaid internship.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Of course." So they started paying me in a junior role, and very quickly I got more responsibilities. I was very young, but I was also very mature,
Hmm.
and I was very invested as well. So I started working in international trade, supporting sort of the marketing initiatives for
Uh-huh.
the importers in
Yeah.
other countries.
Yeah.
Uh, all our 90% of the production of the wine was exported to Europe, the US, Brazil, and all English speaking countries.
Hmm.
And the previous years, I was very focused on learning French because that was like the language of the wine. And suddenly I was finding myself struggling with a very basic English, and I thought, okay, my next step is going to be studying English.
Yeah.
But I stayed there for a couple of years
Okay.
and finished my courses remotely,
Mhm.
and yeah.
Awesome. And then you've gone on to have a few startups, Iwaki and Bytes company. I think Bytes was your first. Do you want to
Yeah.
tell us about that?
Yeah, so Bytes. So after just connecting this to a story, so I ended up coming to Australia to learn English, and I studied English for a while, and then I went to university.
Mhm.
Uh, I was a little bit like I wanted to do as well something else, and I studied an engineering degree,
Mhm.
renewable energy engineering. And as you know, an engineering is a huge load of work. Like it's a lot of study, a lot of pain. So we used to study long hours um like even overnight, staying in labs for like until like over midnight and things like that. And I was always hungry, and I had again a limited budget because I was a student as well again.
Yeah.
And so I would go to the vending machines, and there was
Mhm.
like nothing to eat. There
Mhm.
was all this crappy food, so expensive, like twice the price of a supermarket.
Yeah.
And you there as a student, hungry, and the vending machines were so crap. And I obsessed with this problem. I was like, how is there no like better options for the vending machines?
Yeah.
So I started doing some research. At that time, I went to Japan, which you know is huge for vending
Mhm.
machines.
Absolutely.
I went to China,
Mhm.
and that inquiring, I see how could I start a business that has beautiful vending machines with exciting options, healthy options, and is accessible in terms of price, and which were like the problems. And so I put a small budget together, and I bought a vending machine from a supplier that I found in China, and it was
Yeah.
the first like touch screen vending machine at the time in the whole Sydney. Like it was
Wow.
so beautiful, so
Yeah.
innovative, and I was obsessed with it. I wanted to bring it. So I put a small budget, and I started this vending machine business, and we needed to start scaling it. And after I finished uni, I started to try, like, I left that degree sort of halfway because it became too technical, and I also wanted to start making money. And
Yeah.
now I had this project. Um, so I started growing it and finding all the limitations to find the sites, because obviously you need to find the sites. But I also wanted to innovate in the technology, like
Mhm.
how these machines feel, look, and what they had, and how we ultimately I was solving that problem.
Yeah.
So that whole process was very interesting.
Mm. And how did that end up? Did you end up selling it or yeah?
Yeah. So I had it for like a year before the pandemic, and it was growing really, really fast. And then the pandemic hit,
Mm.
uh, which was really sad. And towards the end of the pandemic, um, Nestle contacted us and say, "We want to work with you. Can you help us to design this noodle?" I know it's vending machine where people can just grab like a freshly made noodles and oats. And so we started working with them and designing like the experience with the robotics, and they have a supplier that design machines for McDonald's, and we worked with them to design the whole experience and
Mhm.
the UI and how people was like interacting with it.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be the greatest opportunity, but the lockdowns kept going and going. And at that time, that was like 3 years, including the 2 years of the pandemic. It was great because I managed to grow it to like 15 sites,
Mhm.
and it was making like $75,000 income for 2 days of work, which is really
Very
good.
good. Yeah.
And
For
even
a uni student.
during Yeah, and
Yeah.
even during the pandemic,
Mhm.
it growed a bit, and we just found niches like, like we have this vending machine in a post office, not post office, like a distribution center for Australian Post
Yeah.
and factories and like all these areas where people was still working, and they were
Mm-hmm.
very niche, and they were doing really well because no other things were open.
Mm.
So it was doing really well. But at the end, I was just like, it was all these struggles, all these things are not working with Nestle, and just because the city was not opening for us
Yeah.
to launch. We actually built like the machine, it was ready to go, but we were never able to launch because of the lockdowns. So it was very sad, but yeah, I ended up selling it at the end of the pandemic, just after, like 6 months after the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. And during the pandemic, I started with Iwaki as a
Mm-hmm.
different thing when things were slowing down for Bytes, the vending machine company.
Okay. And what does Ewoki do?
Yeah, so Iwoki came as well as part of another problem that I have. So I was struggling to find a lot of suppliers for everything for the vending machines. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted a particular vending machine or a vinyl or like a signage or like a payment system or parts for the vending machine for the robotics structure of it. Everything was hard to find suppliers. You just will always be in the struggle. So I was like, I should solve this problem. I should start a marketplace where
Mm-hmm.
suppliers and manufacturers can find buyers um, easier, and they can just meet each other. So I started working with with Ewoki, and just building this marketplace. Very quickly realized the scale was huge, and
Mm-hmm.
I was running out of money. I was tired because of the exhaustion of the pandemic and the limitations of the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
So I decided that was a time to not keep going with it, because yeah, it was just that all these limitations, and that's something that I learned too, that sometimes you are determined, but sometimes there's a time that giving up or quitting also makes sense, and that
Yeah.
can also take you to the next thing that you're going to put your life and your devotion on and potentially succeed with.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think you sort of softened a bit that determination over the years? So, like you've had these, amazing determination, you had these successes, and then, you're a bit older now, and you maybe in the past, like if it was you, you would have just said, "No, I'm going to make this work," and because I was a bit like that with my startup. No, it's going to work. It's the goal, so to speak. Like the success is just around the corner, and it might well have been, but I mean, we had problems as well, pandemic, and
Mhm.
investor pulling out the last minute, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, and then my co-founder left, but I actually felt a big, big relief when everything sort of stopped, and
Yes.
and now I'm doing this. So funny enough, that my startup has still got a lifeline, because just when I talked to my ex co-founder, like, okay, let's just close it up. That day, we got a text and saying there's a training organization, because we're doing virtual reality training, that wants to do something with us and do some sort of um, profit sharing type of thing. So we're doing a trial of that at the moment. So it was like on life support, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, no, I can completely relate to when you're saying, like, relief, and uh, my co-founders were younger than me, so I was trying to keep them as well excited, and just trying to go through the journey and the obstacles and everything. Um, but yeah, I think the determination still lives in me. Um, but I do stop and reflect on that, and I make sure I don't get too soft. Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, am I being too soft
Mm-hmm.
and no fighting for it in terms
Yeah.
of like going for it? Because obviously financially is a better position. Like after my startups, I was able to find a job that I absolutely love. I'm still in product
Mm.
management, and sort of being a founder as well. And just being comfortable in that position, sometimes I look back and say, am I being soft? But I also look back and think, all right, this a time that I would need to enjoy a little bit of all this stuff that I have worked
Yeah, you have to
since
have a bit of time off as well, and then enjoy things. Work hard, play hard, as they say. Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, we got to look after ourselves as well, and that's always been a topic in many of the episodes that I've done is burnout. In fact, just the last podcast I did, this person and the one before, they both burnt out because they'd just gone so hard into something
Mm,
and not taken any other time out. And one was working in corporate 100 hours a week, and the other was
mm,
starting his startup, 24/7, 7 days a week. And both of them got burnt out, And so
yeah.
it's good to slow down before that happens and listening to
Yeah.
those people.
In the startup culture, and I always say that we are a breed, especially when you go to a startup incubators. I always like, oh, these people is like me. It's so exciting because
I
everyone is
love it.
just
Yeah,
willing to give it all,
I know.
and I always say like we just a breed, and you just
Yeah,
can relate. You share your stories. You just willing to give it all. Whereas in corporate, you always find people in the middle that is there because they have to pay the bills, and the dreamers and the achievers and all this. But when you are in an incubator, everyone is willing to give it all, and that's wonderful and inspiring. But yeah, you need to as well sometimes step back, especially at those points, and think is and understand when you should quit, and that can potentially as well take you to the one that you're going to succeed
yeah,
with. And I think it is important to realize that.
yeah, yeah. It's a difficult journey, and yeah, having that support, other founders, it's really, really important. And I felt the same. I worked out at Macquarie University Incubator for like years and years and years, and still got really good friends there. Still go in there, and yeah, that support is needed. And also, if you've got problems, with your startup, which is always the case, meeting with other founders and discussing it, I find is the best way to
Hmm.
work through those things. I mean, mentors are good, but you can get a thing called mentor whiplash that Liz Weigart was telling me about, and I thought, yeah, I can relate to that. So you got to find the right mentors and people you relate to, and in the end, you got to make your own decisions. But talking to other startup founders, I find is really productive and really good. Okay, Laura. So
Yes.
we're going to go back to your mum's store, right? So is this in the 80s in Colombia or the 90s?
Yeah, she started in the 80s
Okay.
and I grew up in the 90s. Yeah.
Okay. So it's in the 80s, she's going well, in the 90s, and then there's Coles type, Woolies type supermarkets coming on, and she's, losing sales over a period of time. So you now, with all your knowledge and the age that you are hired to go in and help your mum. So what are you going to do?
Interesting. Yeah. So I will first go and understand what is it that people is so attracted to these new
Mhm.
stores. What is it that
Yep.
is being like a competitive advantage for them, and what can be that competitive advantage for our little business, and how you can start
Hmm.
competing around that. I feel like as well it will become to um, potentially relationships, like how do you get closer to who you are, who your clients, and as well is starting to negotiate with your suppliers on these products that were also stored in those big places, and what was the prices, and how you negotiate with your suppliers. I think that's some of the things. I always found it very interesting, those brands, like home brands, and like Aldi, that they have
Yeah.
their own products. I always thought that was great advantage, and if I had my time, it's something that I also wanted to do with the vending machines, to have my own products. And we developed like a couple where they were our own products. We
Yeah.
had like great margins with them, but the consumers didn't know that they were like the home brand. So how
Mm.
we could develop like chips, like or like cheese and crackers that were
Mhm.
our own brand, but they had their own brand that looked appealing and interesting,
Yeah.
literally like Aldi.
Well, what
And
was
that's
your
how
mum's name?
Aldi scaled and became
What,
different. Sorry?
what was your mum's name?
Edilma.
Edelma's Cheese and Crackers.
Yes. Something like that. You have the product, the label, and I think that's a great opportunity. Your
Mhm.
margins will become huge, and then
Mm.
you just make sure that your products are great quality. And Trader Joe's, which is, I think, is the brother of Aldi. Trader, I don't know if you know Trader Joe's
I've heard of
in the
them.
US.
Yeah.
Uh, Huge as well, like a scale with the same concept. So I thought that would be something that could have taken her to the next level. And also understanding the expenses. That's something that probably my mom didn't know. Like, how do you
Mhm.
manage your expenses, and your revenue, and where your money is going, and all these things. She was just like making the transactions and just sitting there to wait for the next customer, because
Yeah.
they didn't
Yeah.
know how to do it better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good advice. So I'm sure that would have helped your mum's business a lot. But then again, maybe you wouldn't be where you are if your mum's business didn't go so well. You never know, because that's maybe part of the determination that you had coming from where you were. Obviously, or a lot of that determination, I guess.
That's right. I think about that very often too. Like, if because my very wealthy friends, many of them work in their family businesses, and sometimes I don't think they are as happy anyway, and they're having like all that luck and uh, all of that. Whereas I have gone and do my own thing and what I wanted to do, and I think that is great. So yeah, definitely wouldn't have the same determination. And looking back, I did not have any chances, and what I have today and what I have built, I feel proud. And I think the same formula, if you apply it to any aspect of your life, I'm sure you're gonna get results. You gotta have a dream. You gotta have a plan. You gotta have you gotta approach to people. You gotta talk to them. You gotta negotiate. Um, and you gotta be there. And things, some things are luck, some things are hard work, but you find those environments where the hard work and the luck just come, and it's just like you are there in the right place, the right moment. And that
Yeah.
was me with Dr. Juan Luis,
Yeah.
the visit. It was like all the effort that I put in my studies, and all the determination and laser focus, and then this event, and then he was there, and then I approach, and then we talk, and then you got it. And that's businesses as well. That is startups too. You gotta be there. You gotta keep working. You gotta keep moving, and you will find that luck moment where
Yeah.
everything just clicks.
Yeah, yeah, you got to sort of make your own luck. It's not just if you just sit around and do nothing, luck, luck's not going to happen. But if the more you do, the more chances you have, or more likely that something's going to happen. So getting yourself out there, and I love your approach, just talking to people and not being put off by their titles or whatever it is. And I think a lot of startup founders can learn from that. including myself when I started. Now I'm not haven't got a problem, but you feel intimidated. Like we had the CEO of Woolies AHL hotels fly down from Brisbane. This is just all pre-COVID, and it looked like so many things were going to happen. Then COVID sort of hit, but we were really actually that's quite a funny story because this person. We looked him up on the internet, did all this research, and he flew down and he walked into the incubator and we're like, oh my God, it doesn't look anything like the guy we've been researching. He looks so much younger. It's like, and then he said, oh yeah, hi, it's the name and blah, blah, blah. And we sat down and I'm like, oh, what is going on? And then we started talking and then he gave his card and it said the name and then Junior next to it. So we've been looking up his father, the wrong one, and this was actually his son. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? So it was a funny moment because, yeah,
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, things
yeah,
like that happen. See?
yeah. We got
But
through it
so what
anyway.
happened then?
Yeah. Oh well, COVID hit soon after, so everything sort of fell apart, unfortunately.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Same
yeah,
thing.
COVID got in the middle of
Yeah,
many startups. It's steered everyone in a different direction.
yeah, yeah. All right. Look, just to finish off, I just want to ask you if there was is there a question that no one's ever asked you that you wish they had asked you?
Interesting. No, I'm not sure. I don't think so. People is always very inquisitive about the businesses, and when I had them, they always ask me like all these questions. I'm not sure. I love sharing my story in general
Mm-hmm.
because I feel when I share my story, I feel understood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, so maybe I wish that more people ask me like, tell me the story of your life.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can be more understood and sort of that really explain myself. And I feel like more people in not just about me and everyone should always share the story of their life, where they come
Mm-hmm.
from, so you can be fully understood.
Yes.
Or yes, if you know where you're coming from, you know who you are, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that.
Okay.
Uh,
I think that's important, and
but
pretty much that's what we've done today. And yeah, stories are really important, and of course, yeah, you understand people a lot better. I think even some people may annoy us sometimes. You think, well, what is that person doing? If you knew their story, their life story, think, oh, okay, I can see why they're like that or they do that. There'd be more understanding in the world. That's for sure, because everyone reacts in a certain way because of all their life history and everything that's happened, or it could be trauma, or it could be so many different things in their life,
mm,
their upbringing and everything else, and that makes them, the person that they are. So I'm really grateful that I had you on the podcast today, and I really enjoyed your story. I think it's an amazing story, inspiring story for many,
mm.
and I hope as many people as possible listen to this and can gain that inspiration, that determination that Laura Hicks has, or should I say Laura Hicks? Laura, because I speak Spanish as
Either.
well. Yeah,
Both of them are completely fine, so it's good. Yeah,
yeah,
no, I hope everyone really believes in the power of their dreams
mm,
and just getting it out there. And I'll continue doing that. And I think that's what more young people as well have to listen to. And startup founders, you just gotta believe, you gotta be determined, you gotta propose, you gotta get out there and work hard, and luck will find you. And if there's no one thing is the other, when you hear about other entrepreneurs' stories, you probably find that there's a lot of startups before they even succeed with one thing. So that's another as well thing that you just be learning from failures, and then find find
Yeah.
your success somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's what this podcast is all about, learning from failures, fail wisdom, all the wisdom we gain from the failures all along the way. And everyone fails, and we just need to learn from that and
Mhm.
progress. And some people, they're successful after 7 startups. So, keep going if you can, and get that determination and get out there and talk to people, and don't be scared. And you never know, you might
No,
meet your own Juan Luis one day.
that's right. There's one of those for every person outside, or more than one, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like a
Just need
guardian
to
angel
talk to them.
almost.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
wonderful.
All right. Thanks so much, Laura.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.